passé bien, là. Ça fait que beaucoup de gens. Le vrai, de 8h40, il y a beaucoup de monde. Tu cherches des regards que tu Leur numéro, c'est quoi? Pour les retrouver par la suite? Comme un numéro de matricule? Est-ce que comme prendre des photos sur mon cellulaire de cette page-là, ça serait plus simple?
Alors, bonjour tout le monde. Je suis votre gestionnaire de salle, Philippe. Est-ce que vous préférez que je lise ces instructions en anglais ou en français? English. English. All right. For this case, you'll have 20 minutes to make your presentation in front of the judges. If your presentation lasts under 18 minutes, you'll receive a 1-point penalty for every 30 seconds. If your presentation lasts under 15 minutes, your team will receive the score of 0 at the general ranking for this case. If after 20 minutes you have not completed the presentation, you'll be stopped to move on to the period of questions. At the end of the presentation, the judges will have 5 minutes to ask their questions. I remind the jury that it is mandatory to ask a minimum of 1 question during this period. If after 5 minutes you have not finished answering the question, you will be stopped. Throughout the presentation, I will indicate the remaining time using cardboards at 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, and 30 seconds. I will make a countdown using my fingers for the last 10 seconds. I remind you that it is prohibited to say the name of the university, you will receive, and if you do, you will receive a penalty. I also remind the public that it is prohibited to use any electronic devices during the presentation, and the public must stay quiet until the end of the question period. Before we begin, I'll ask the room to turn off their cell phones and put them on mute so that we don't interrupt the presentation. I'll now ask the judges to present themselves, and after you'll be free to start your presentation.
Hi, I'm Sanya. I'm a digital marketing advisor at FinPass.
Hi, I'm Vanessa, and I'm the marketing advisor at FinPass.
Hi, my name is Jean-François Lacroix. I'm operation manager at Financial Legends.
Hi, I'm Jessica Levelet. I'm brand manager for Procter & Gamble.
Hi, Charles-Olivier Tremblay, Marketing Manager at L'Oréal.
Hi, José Lachance, HR Director Canada for VF Corporation.
When I was younger, I wasn't studying sciences or anything, but yet, when I got older, I always wanted to become an engineer.
When I was younger, I loved playing the piano. But as school came, I wasn't able to dedicate as much time to it, but I wish I had.
And when I was younger, I simply wanted to be someone in business. You see, we all had these passions as kids, but it wasn't because we loved them. It's because our older siblings had those exact same passions. We wanted to be exactly like them. We all have that older sibling we look up to. We want to be who they are. We want to be a copy of them. And that's exactly what we're here to talk to you about today. Good afternoon. My name is Samuel. These are my colleagues Fumi and William. And we're here today to help ensure that FEDPLAS and La Jeunesse aren't just a copy of each other, but a better version of one another. Here at Spotlight Consulting, to put your spotlight on your solution. Now let's take a look at what we're here today to solve. We're here today to ensure that La Jeunesse, that you can ensure leadership in the Windows sector through positioning, strategy, and ultimately, branding. We've done this with 3 key considerations. The first one being a target segment. So we want to ensure that you have the right target segment for this, that you're not just positioning it to whomever, and that within the market you know exactly who you want to be having your segment towards. Second aspect is the branding characteristics. So what defines your brand? What's the identity of the brand itself, and how does that go in line with FENPLAS itself? And finally, the idea of the marketing strategy. So this is going to look over not simply just the branding or positioning, but it's going to be the rest in terms of what the marketing is going to look like. The campaign, the digital aspect of it especially. We want to make sure that we really bring La Jeunesse into the modern century. I'll now pass it on to Fumi, who will be taking care of the analysis and letting you know a bit of what's going on within the industry as well as the company itself.
Thank you, Samuel. So to dive into a bit of industry and company analysis, we understand that your company has been very successful in terms of being able to grow, and that's through expansion and acquisition of even La Jeunesse. We want to take this even further and ensure that your branding is secure to allow you to grow even further in the long term. We know that you're known for your superior quality and affordability, and so these are attributes that we want to communicate in your brand definition as we're seeking to define that. And as far as the industry, we understand that it's very competitive with key players like Axis, Porte, Fenêtre, Verdun. And to understand why it's significant is because the Windows industry is a very, it's construction, so it may be seen as a generic product, and so it's important for your brand to have a strong branding so that when consumers think Windows, they think of your company and not the others. We want the association to be clear. And as far as your company specific, the marketing mix, you have a product that is Windows, and what's great about it is that you're able to customize it. You have this for both B2B, so contractors, as well as B2C, so end users and homeowners. And so that's a great product mix that you have. And as far as pricing, you're considered as generally affordable compared to your current company. And that's again something that you want to communicate to your end users because that's what they want. And as far as place, you have a very good distribution strategy as far as being where the people are. And we want to make sure that, again, your message is also where the people are. So you're currently in 100 retailers and big box stores across Quebec, and we see great potential for you to grow even further and to be at other places across Eastern Canada. As far as promotion, you've done successful advertising with TV in the past, as well as having a sponsorship event. And we think that there's great potential for you to go even further and to have a promotion strategy, as Samuel hinted, that has a bit of digital marketing as well as a big integrated marketing campaign. So as far as the customer, who are we targeting? That was one of our key considerations. You presented three options to us, being the construction contractors, the young buyers, as well as the experienced buyers. Between the three, there are still key characteristics that are similar between them all. So as far as what they care about their home and family, and the lifestyle they're seeking to maintain is one that you need to associate yourself with, so that you can be the people in their homes, the place where they're going to spend with their family. You want to have that association as well. They also care deeply about value and quality, and that's something that you offer, but we need to make this clear in your branding and how you communicate it to the end users. They also care about sustainability because they care about their home country, their homeland, Quebec, as most of your customers are Quebec oriented and that's where you sell. So we want to also tie in sustainability into our recommendation. And as far as wants, they care about variety and choice, and that again is something that you do with your option to customize and have even personalized service with the sales rep. And so these features are things we want to expand further and make it clear in the messaging so it's associated in the customer's mind. So as far as the customer's mind and how they think and how they go about this process, we have a customer journey. So we can imagine Alex, he or she is male or female, he's just bought a home, and they're recognizing the need that they want to customize it, and maybe it's a bit of an old house in the West Island that needs to be modified and updated, and so they want to update their windows. So what they're going to do is that they're going to search for information online, as we all do, and so we need to make sure that we're present there, and that's why we're going to put a very big emphasis on the digital strategy. Because your goal here is to be part of their consideration sets. And then on top of that, besides shopping online, they have even more questions, so they want to be able to interact with someone in store. So they head to your big box retailers and they seek clarification, and they really want that personalized customer experience. And so this is where you have the omni-channel, so you want to make sure the connection between your in-store experience as well as your online experience is the same. And then finally, they end up selecting a company and receiving a quote, and they make a final purchase. And we want to tap in there and be the company that they choose. So we need to make sure that we're in the consideration and part of the omnichannel experience from the beginning. And then at the end, we have the post-purchase where they have their windows, they're looking out through it every day, and they're happy about their purchase. And that's the goal. The goal really is to have a satisfied customer who's retained, and so in 10, 15 years when they're updating their windows again, or even referring to their friends, it's your company that comes to mind. And so with this, the key information I want you to take away from the analysis is that your brand, La Jeunesse, you need to define your brand characteristics in a way that's also easy to communicate to your target markets. There's also the fact that the product, as well as the brand image, needs to stand out. Because like I said, Windows can be pretty generic. People don't necessarily have an idea of what brand to associate with it. So we need to be in the consideration set and have the brand La Jeunesse come to mind. And finally, you need to have an appeal to Alex so that as part of their lifestyle and all their wants and needs, you're in that frame of mind. So now we have a bunch of alternatives that Samuel will address now.
Thank you, Fumi. Now, we do have three strategic alternatives, or three choices, if you will, which we have considered. First one, obviously, is the construction contractors. This is one of the targets which you showed us, and obviously you know a bit more about that. The The second one is the young buyers. So this is the newer market. These people are aged 28 to about 45. They're very price sensitive, similar to how the construction contractors are, but not to the same degree as the construction, sorry, more to the same degree as the construction contractors. And finally, you have the experienced buyers. These people are a bit older, not quite price sensitive. They want that luxury aspect, and the people you've been with for a while, as you have 50% of them within your market. Now, if we take a look at the alternatives in terms of a matrix, we've decided to have this within three main considerations. The first one, as you can see, is the risk of cannibalization. So we want to make sure that within Fenêtre La Jeunesse, that you're not cannibalizing the sales of Fenplast. That is something very key to consider because obviously within a sub-brand, that is something that, especially when you acquire, you want to make sure that you're not taking away sales that are already there. The second aspect is customer loyalty. So we want to make sure that people aren't just there right at the end of their purchases. We want to target them when they're younger. And finally, the idea of pricing strategy. So how does this fall into place with how you price your products at Fenêtre La Jeunesse? We want to make sure that this is in line with what the people can afford and their price sensitivity especially. So immediately you can eliminate the experienced buyers as simply they're too old at this point. They're not looking to start that home. They're not looking to have these new purchases constantly. It's a one-time deal, maybe two if you're lucky, and it doesn't really fit as well with the pricing strategy. It ultimately is okay, but it's not what we want to get you into. And as well, within the customer loyalty, or within the risk of cannibalization, it's a huge market that you're in. It's 50% of your overall sales, and we don't want to cannibalize that from Fenplast itself. We can also take away the idea of the young buyers, as simply it does not go in with what you ultimately have as a pricing strategy. They're too price sensitive and doesn't make sense for what they would want. That's why we're proud to present to you our idea of construction contractors. These are people who we know will be proud to buy your product. Now, I want you to imagine, you have that older sibling, or younger sibling for some of us, we all have them, and we want to be exactly like them as we mentioned, but sometimes we need a bit of help in life. We want to do what they're doing, want to be who they are, but maybe we're not quite there yet. And sometimes it does take the help of our older sibling. That's exactly what we want you to do in terms of the price, in terms of the strategy. Where we have Fenêtre La Jeunesse by Fenplast. Now we know this may seem a bit radical, where although you might be thinking, why aren't we separating them, because that's how you've had it before, it's been proven that if you have a strong brand, such as Fenplast, that's carrying Fenêtre La Jeunesse, which doesn't have that brand identity at the moment, that you can be sure that ultimately it will accumulate and it will ensure a strong brand identity in the long term. Here we want to highlight three main points and three main prongs. First one being personal, affordable, luxury. So this is ultimately three characteristics which we feel really go within what Fenêtre La Jeunesse stands for, and we'll get more into that in a second. But the three main aspects that we wanted to touch on, or the strategy rather, is brand characteristics, a marketing campaign, ultimately an overall marketing strategy with an emphasis on digital. Let's take a look at what that actually looks like. So how can we define the brand characteristics of Fenêtre La Jeunesse? The positioning is the young buyers or contractors, in this case, more for less at that aspect. The brand characteristics which are important here are that they are superior quality, that they want to ensure client satisfaction, or you rather want to ensure client satisfaction, and ultimately that you're a local brand. That's something that we want to really touch upon, is the fact that you're superior quality and customer satisfaction. Because a lot of people these days, they don't know how to shop for windows. I myself, I have no idea how to shop for a window, personally. I would love an experience where I'm educated about this, I'm taught about it, and ultimately, I feel as though it's personally towards me. Something that's personalized, as a consumer, makes me want to do it that much more because I feel like I'm really taken in. And with Fenêtre La Jeunesse, since you have that history, as well as the fact that you're redefining it, you have the ability to do that. You can redefine what it means to bring in someone for simply window shopping, which, as my colleague mentioned, to some might seem generic, but for us, we want to make it exciting, modern, and personal. And as well, we want to include the slogan, your window into affordable luxury. I'll get into that in a second because it's very fun. Now, let's take a look at what this actually looks like in terms of the implementation. A quick snapshot of this shows that we have three main phases: the unify, encourage, and heighten strategy phases, which are words that we saw you put over and over. The goals here, within the first one, is awareness and attention. So we want to make sure that we are making people aware of Fenêtre La Jeunesse and the new brand that it is. It's ensuring that the campaign is done properly and that it's rolled out in the idea that it is. The second idea is to encourage. So we want to have people stay retained and ensure that the loyalty segment is there, and ensure that the overall aspect of things, that they want to stay with you for life, that they're not just there for once. And finally, heighten. So this is the ultimate goal of growth and experience and experimenting. So we want to have you expand past just what you're currently doing in different phases in terms of new retailer relationships, which my colleague will get into in a bit, but new retailers is really the goal of this phase. Now, I want you all to imagine, you're sitting there, you're clicking the TV, you're trying to find something interesting to watch, when suddenly, you see a man in a golden suit. You're wondering what that could be, because obviously no one's in a golden suit these days. That's not how it works. I'm in a blue one. you're seeing this commercial and you're automatically very excited because you see a couple there, and the man in the golden suit, who says, "I am your personal window shopper." That's exactly what it is. It's a virtual assistant brought to life as a personal window shopper. He's there and he says, "What would you like?" And the couple in the commercial designs exactly what's going to be in that window. They then take a step through the window and into their house, which is now full of luxury. And it's there to promote the message of the idea that you are personal, affordable, and luxury. Let's take a look at what that looks like. So your personal window shopper, as we mentioned in the campaign. The slogan is your window into affordable luxury, and how it's that much personalized. One notion that Fenêtre La Jeunesse is that new kid on the block, even though you are very well established, but the redefinition of it is that you're that new kid on the block who has that new strategy and really can promise people luxury in however they can get it at an affordable price. We want to do this through main channels of a 30-second TV ad, as mentioned. Social media, we want you to have a very strong presence, but we didn't feel that Instagram was overtly important. We wanted to do a Facebook ad, a targeted Facebook ad, as well as a personalized YouTube ad. We're in the age of personalization, and if a YouTube ad is personalized to the person itself, which is something we can now do, they're that much more likely to want to be a part of it. As well, we want to focus mainly on videos for this aspect because we know that within marketing, videos are one of the most important parts. It's been proven that 70% of people now want to purchase something from a retailer if it's done through a video rather than just an ad, because it's that much more interactive for them. And we know that FemClass, you're very good with AR, as well as the fact that this can be something implemented in the future, which we'll get into in a bit. And finally, we want to have two other aspects. The billboard ad, as we feel this will still keep your luxury, affordable luxury positioning, but will give people a way of seeing your product beyond just simply the videos. It gives you that other way of seeing it, similar to how FemClass has done it before, as well as the fact that we have the idea of the displays within store. And this is more for when people come into stores. Rather than just pulling them in, we want to also ensure that we're pushing the product, because we can't have one strategy without the other. Now, let's take a look at what the digital marketing strategy comes to. This is my personal favorite. I'm very excited about the digital strategy. So within the first aspect, we see retargeting. So retargeting is crucial in this age because we can now see what a consumer is doing. We can head them at different points, different touch points. They say it now takes 6 to 8 touch points for a consumer to buy a product, and that's exactly what retargeting is actually going for. So the main aspect of this, obviously SEO, but the one I want to talk about is automated emails. So automated emails can be set up via certain targets. If someone's looking to shop, you can send them an email as in code if they haven't, or for example, for pricing. If they're looking at your pricing and they haven't bought something within 24 hours, you can automatically have it set up where you'll send them a code and they'll be able to buy a version of the window that's more personal to them. We can get more into that in a bit, but let's move on to the idea of the refining web user experience. We wanted to ensure that we were copying to an extent what FemClass was doing in modifying and ultimately making sure that your mobile experience was ideal. We want to incorporate this with the virtual assistant, which I'll get into in a second, but redefining the web experience is basically ensuring that the mobile experience is perfect. At this point, you can't just have one website that is okay, you have to make sure that it's updated. And as we weren't providing much information on it, we want to ensure that you have something that is overall very easy to follow because we know that customers get very confused, and we want to make sure that the digital strategy is the ultimate strategy for when a consumer goes. We don't want them to have to leave their house until the point of purchase. The virtual assistant is a very cool aspect, so think of it almost as an elevated chatbot. We want them to basically think that they have someone to talk to about everything. And it is going to be a chatbot in a sense, but it's going to be machine learning, whereby they can be with you every step of the way. So if you have a question about what window makes sense with your dimensions, the chatbot is there for you to educate you. If you want to know what colors go well, the chatbot is there to educate you. And we've put a budget in this which allows for a very intelligent AI chatbot to ensure that it's not just something answering a couple of questions. We want this to be a pillar of what Fenêtre La Jeunesse stands for and bringing the digital experience back in. And finally, the lifestyle podcast segment. So podcasts have become such a trend within consumers these days, and it's only skyrocketing. Auditory marketing is one of the biggest trends set for 2020, and we wanted to capitalize on this because we know that you're a company which can perfect this. The podcast aspect we wanted to do was ensuring that you're sponsoring a lifestyle podcast of people towards your consumer, and that ultimately it's going to be the window aspect of the home aspect of the lifestyle podcast.
So let's dive into a bit more detail in terms of implementation. So starting off with the Unify phase, lasting the first 3 months, we're going to start off by rebranding La Jeunesse to Fenêtre La Jeunesse by FemClass. FemClass already has a reputable brand and is very popular within a retailer environment. So we believe rebranding this will provide a more successful outcome. Next is developing the virtual assistant. This is the thing that Samuel was going into great detail about, and this is what we think will be the pillar of this implementation. Next is improving the website user experience. Essentially, nowadays, you want your website to be very streamlined and accessible. So you want people to be able to make that buying decision on your website and not only have to go into store and make that buying decision there. So the overall goal of this is to really create a foundation suitable to raise awareness and attract that new customer market. Next, the encourage phase, lasting the next 3 months. You want to start off by launching your campaign. Now, really what this campaign is centered around is developing an integrated marketing campaign centered around this digital marketing strategy that Sammy wanted to detail about. You want to reach this new target market through the appropriate channels. Next, this is one I'm really excited about. It's a very creative way to perform a B2B strategy. Essentially what it is hosting an event for your retailers of choice and construction contractors of choice, in which you educate them on what Fenêtre La Jeunesse has to offer, as well as the new brand identity. Essentially what this does is not only educate them on these concepts, but also they can bring these into the retail environment and help the consumers make that final buying decision. Now, you may ask, what's in it for them? Essentially, this will drive their purchases, but also we could offer a PFP agreement in the future if necessary. Followed by the sales promotion, which is offering a sales discount on the first purchase of windows of 10%. This will drive the purchasing forward right at the beginning. Next is the last phase of the implementation. You want to approach new retailers in Ontario as well as new retailers in Quebec. This really hits the target on the head where you want to expand your business past what it currently is. Followed by introducing the upgrade program of 10 to 15%. This will retain your customers. Essentially, you offer 2 forms of windows, one at a slightly lower price point and one at a higher price point. We're going to offer a discount if someone wants to upgrade to the more luxurious window. Next is the sustainability initiative. This is one for the long term. It's not one that can be implemented right away. Essentially, it's investing into R&D for solar power capture in your windows. Obviously, this isn't something that will be implemented immediately, but we want you guys to invest in it for the future because this is very popular nowadays. So what can you do tomorrow? You can start using your automated survey to collect data on how to improve your web experience and also how to develop your new chatbot. So financials, I can go into more detail in the Q&A, and I'd like to pass it on to Samuel for the conclusion.
Thank you, William. So let's take a look at why we were actually here today. We want to ensure that you, La Jeunesse, have that new strategy, that redefined modern strategy to ensure that your branding is perfect. We did it in terms of target segmentation, branding, and marketing strategy. In terms of target segmentation, we had the personal, affordable luxury. In terms of the branding aspect, we had a campaign and digital marketing initiatives, which were my favorite part. And finally, the idea of the marketing strategy, we had young buyers. And this, I'm going to say, was a typo. We did mean young buyers rather than construction contractors, so that's on us. We thank you for listening. Et on vous remercie d'avoir écouté notre présentation. Maintenant, si vous voulez nous poser des questions en français ou en anglais, on est tous bilingues. Merci.
Est-ce que ça serait possible de vous expliquer les principaux éléments du budget, s'il vous plaît?
C'est sûr.
So you start off with expenses in marketing, such as social media, billboards, TV, POP displays, which we would have you send to retailers in order to increase that brand awareness in store, followed by the event, the educational event that I touched upon, as well as the influencer podcast idea that Samuel was talking about. Next is a virtual assistant, and you can see that this was a very high portion of your budget, $150,000. We want this virtual assistant to be very integrated and very communicative with your web users. Next is the solar R&D and the discounts, the possible discounts that you're going to offer to your customers, and then a miscellaneous cost of $10,000, rendering your budget completely used up of $500,000 with a zero in the end.
Is that budget for Fenêtre La Jeunesse by FenPlus, is that whole $500,000 for this specific brand?
Yes.
Did you have a podcast in mind, specifically?
So we didn't go into specifics of which podcast to go into. We argued for a bit which one was perfect, but we felt as though it made more sense to give suggestions as to which ones would work. We ultimately felt as though if you go out and find different lifestyle podcasts, there'll be one that will take you personally, since it is a very specific project, and giving one particular name would kind of limit you to what our idea would be on that.
I would like to have your opinion on, because you're talking about approach new retailers in Ontario. So Ontario, of course, is English only. What do you think of Fenêtre la Jeunesse in type of a branding perspective? I think Fenplace can be both bilingual, but what's your take on Fenêtre la Jeunesse in Ontario on a wording perspective?
Well, we think that, like, thinking of brands like Pret à Manger, where the French aspect of it is really part of its identity, we want to maintain that. And Ontario is not that far. It's not like we're talking about BC, where it does have more of a French culture. If you think of places like Ottawa, closer to the border. So we think that we want you to stay true to your identity, especially if we're trying to make it consistent by sticking to La Jeunesse, Fenêtre la Jeunesse.
You talked about the connection between offline and online. Can you expand a little bit more on that?
For sure. So ultimately, the real goal in this is we know that consumers these days are lazy. They don't want to leave their houses. They don't want to deal with a person unless absolutely necessary or if it adds value. And the whole concept of both the commercial and the virtual assistant was that you don't need to leave your house anymore. The slogan, the alternate slogan was going to be, you can shop for windows without leaving your home. And that's basically the concept of the digital marketing aspect. It's how we're incorporating. They can actually speak to a real person when they want to do the quote. And that's when the real value added is of the real person. But other than that, the whole purpose is to ensure that the digital marketing strategy is heightening the grassroots strategy and not working against each other. So the whole thing is going to be digital until basically the end result of it.
I would like if you can go into a little bit more details about your retargeting strategy on an email perspective.
For sure. So on that basis, we basically wanted to do different retargeting depending on where they were within the consumer journey. If we can go back to the consumer journey slide. Obviously, this is a very important part of shopping ultimately, is that consumer journey. And since we're transferring it all to digital, retargeting is a huge part of it. So whether someone has looked at your pricing strategy very briefly and looked at it, you can test that. You can make sure that there's an automatic email that's sent right after within 24 hours for a code for them to have a discount. Depending where they are, and again, we can get more details on that, but it's basically where they are depending on within the consumer journey. We want to have an automated email sent to them that also is personalized. Because we know that within...
And how can I send an email? Did they opt in? How did they opt in? Like, how can I send an email without the email itself?
We feel as though a pop-up banner directly on your website would make the most sense, and that's going to be part of the website redesign that we went into. I can go into more details on the website redesign, but that would be the basis of it.
Thanks.
You also talked about new retailers, the importance of going to new retailers. How do you foresee this? Like, what are the strengths that you see that we can use to do that?
Essentially, this is where your automated survey comes in. So you want to test, basically, beat success in certain retailers in Quebec and the retailers that you have success in right now, and base that and use that as a foundation to sort of search for these new retailers in Ontario and other retailers in Quebec. So you want to base the search off of the success of your current retailers.
Je prends le temps pour la période des questions a été écoulée. J'invite le public et l'équipe de quitter la salle.